Hello. In this lecture, we'll discuss simple C program and the steps of execution of a C program, variable, token, keyword, identifier, and basic data types. Now, first we start with a simple C program, and here I have written a simple C program, and here has include stdio.h. It is basically known as preprocessor directive. Preprocessor directives. What is the meaning of this preprocessor directives? It basically gives information to a compiler to pre-process the information before actual compilation starts. So these information are basically given or give instruction to the compiler to pre-process this information before actual compilation starts. Now next, this int main, this main is basically it is a function, right? This main is basically it is a function. We will learn more about the function, but now int main it is a function, right? And within this curly braces, and this is basically the comment print f, it is basically display the string inside the quotation. It is basically the state we can say it is a comment, and printf first bracket within double quotation, whatever written is basically string, and printf is to print something on the output screen, and this printf is basically a keyword. Now the function main is executed first in every C program, and this function main is basically a special function and must be present in every C program, and this function calls other functions if it exists in your program when it is needed. So this is basically a simple C program. It will has include stdio dot. Stdio dot is means standard input output header file, which is need to be included in every C program. Now we'll show how or the step by step execution of a C program. So first is the source code. Source code means that we are basically written. So written C code. So initially what we have done, usually we write a C program with the extension of C. That means .c extension. We have written any program with the .c extension and then save. This program is basically known as the source program. Clear? So we call it as a source program. Source program. Right? Now next is the pre-processing. So whatever pre-processing, preprocessor like has included stdio.h, has included mat.h. These are basically performed. Next, we compile the source program. That is a compilation. That is the compile the source program. Compiler basically convert this source program into an equivalent machine instruction. So compiler, after that compiler will check for errors. If your source code is error free, then code is converted into an object file. Clear? So what I have mentioned, so compiling or compilation basically convert source program. So it basically convert source program into equivalent machine instructions. And also compiler checks for the errors. If the source code is error free, then the converted code, or then the code is basically converted into an object file which is known as .obj file. After that, linking, then program is basically linked with included header file. Included header files. So program is linked with also other libraries, and this process is executed by the linker. So the role of the linker is to link with the included header files as well as some other libraries that you have used in your source program. So this role is basically performed by the linker. And then after linking, so linking basically combines different object files to produce an actual executable file. So linker combines different object files object files to produce an actual exe file or executable file. Executable file, which is basically we say .exe file are basically created. Now once then basically the loading means another concept which is basically loading means physically placing the machine instruction and data into the main memory. So how it basically performs? So loading is another concept, or loader basically role is loader basically perform this. So it means loading physically, loader basically perform loading physically placing the machine instructions and the data into main memory, into a main memory. So loader actually loading a program involves reading content of your executable file containing basically the program instructions into the memory, and then carrying out other preparatory tasks for or to prepare the executable for the running. So once loading is complete, the operating system starts the program by passing control to the loaded program code. Then it is executed or it is running. So this is basically step by step execution of a C program. Means first we need to write a C program with the .c extension. Then some pre-processing are basically done. Then compilation, convert source code into an equivalent machine instruction code. It basically known as object file .obj extension. Then linker basically perform linking. Linking means combining basically included some other files, other libraries, whatever you have used in your program. So finally linker combines different this object file to produce an actual executable file, and the loader basically is loading the actual machine instruction as well as data into a main memory. And once loading is complete, then the operating system basically transfer the control to this loaded program. and then the program will be executed. Now come to the point, what is token? Basically in C program, what is known as token? Token basically means a smallest individual unit in a program. So it is it basically the concept is the smallest individual unit in a program. We call it as a token. So suppose token are basically, why token are basically used? Token are basically essential for the compiler to understand your code. Token can be several types like the keyword, then identifier, operator, string literals, special character, etc. These are basically the tokens. Now I will give an example of token. For example, suppose I have written a statement, right? Suppose printf first bracket, then you have written hello, okay, then comma world, then new line, double quotation close, and then so every statement in C language is basically terminated by semicolon. Now this statement, how many tokens are there? First of all, this is one of the token, and then this whole string is another token, then right parenthesis another token, then semicolon. So actually in this statement there is a 5 tokens, right? So 5 tokens. Okay, what are these tokens? One is the printf, second is the first bracket, third is the string literals, and fourth is the right parenthesis, and 5 is the semicolon. So these are the 5 literals within this statement, tokens within this statements. Now we'll discuss the keyword and the identifier. So keyword, first we'll discuss the identifier. What is basically identifier? Identifier are basically used to identify or name variables. Yeah, used to identify or name variables, or symbolic constant, function, etc. And what are keywords? Keywords actually a predefined meaning and cannot be changed by the user, and also cannot be used as a identifier. So keyword have a predefined meaning and cannot be changed by the user. So some we call also the reserved word and have some special meaning. Now how we declare any identifier? There is a rule for this. So now uh, identifier name must be a sequence of letter. So identifier name must be a sequence of letters and digit, and must begin with a letter. Okay. Second, the underscore character. The underscore character like this is considered as a letter, as letter. And name should not be the same as keyword, or identifier name should not be same as a keyword. So the name should not be same as keyword. So you have to, when we are basically uh, declaring an identifier or name any variable or symbolic constant, at that time we have to remember these three concepts, that identifier name should be a sequence of letter digit, underscore can also be applicable, and underscore is basically considered as a letter and must begin with a letter, no digit at the beginning, and keyword name should not be same as the identifier name. Now we define uh, some then we'll define the variable. What is basically variable? Here also we have discussed some the concept of variable. What is basically variable? So variable means named memory location. Variable, this variable means a named memory location, or a variable definition basically associates a memory location with the variable name. So associates, so a variable definition associates a memory location with the variable name. The value may be changed during execution of the program. So variable's value may be changed during the execution of a program. Now, basic data types in C programs. So this data type are means to identify the type of the data and the associated operations of handling it. Yeah, so data type is basically means, what are the meaning of this data type? It means to identify the type of data and associated operations of handling it. Means, for example, suppose we have a two integer variables or integer suppose data type, so we can perform addition, subtraction, multiplication. But if we have string, data type is a string, so we cannot perform multiplication, we cannot perform addition, rather we can perform concatenation, we can perform substitution, etc. So these are basically data type means uh, type of data. It may be integer, float, character, or double, and associated operations of handling this data type. Now, why the data type is basically required? So every data type, we know that there is a memory allocation, right? So every data type has a memory size associated with it, because the integer, generally integer is considered, it is basically vary machine to machine, and generally integer is basically 2 byte, so it may be 2 byte. Float is basically considered as a 4 byte, and character is basically considered as a 1 byte. Double is basically considered as a 8 byte. So we know that every data type has a memory size associated with it. So proper utilization of memory can be done when suitable data types are used. Clear? That's why basically there is a necessity of the data types. Now, These are basically the primary data types: integer, float, character, double. So integer have 2 byte, float 4 byte, character 1 byte, and double is basically double precision floating point number. It takes 8 bytes. And this are basically known as the primitive data types. Int, float, character, and double are basically known as a primitive data types. Clear? Some other data types also there. We'll discuss later one. The data derived data type means there will be array, then the pointer, etc. And user defined data types are also there. That is a structure, union, and one thing that is known as a valueless data type, we call it as a void. Clear? Void is basically is some data type where it is called the valueless. Clear? It is known as the valueless. Valueless data type, void. Now, so this data derived data type. So we can give here example the derived data type right now. So primitive. Actually, we have mentioned that primitive or basic data type, primitive, and then derived data type, user defined data type, and the valueless. So valueless, as we have mentioned, the void, valueless. But primitive data type, as we have mentioned, the integer, int, float, char, double. These are primitive data types. And derived data types are basically array and pointer, function. These are basically the derived data types. Means data types that are derived from the primitive or built-in data types are basically we call them are the derived data types. So data types that are built or derived from primitive or built in data types are referred to as derived data types. Derived data types. Now, this derived data type basically do not create new data type. Instead, they add some functionality to the existing data types. So it basically adds some functionality to the existing data types. So these are basically known as the derived data types. Now, a user defined data are basically structure and union, enumeration, and valueless is void. So these are basically the uh, uh, also the data type. We can also consider these are also the data type, but here primitive means in float, character, double. Derived means array, pointer, function. Derived data type means they basically do not create any new data types, rather they use the primitive data types, and it basically enhances some functionality to the existing primitive data types. And user defined means user define this kind of data types, structure, union, enum, and valueless is known as the void data types. Now we'll discuss the qualifier, or sometimes we call it as a fine tuning the data types. qualifier basically modify the behavior of the variable type to which they are applied. Clear? So we can define qualifier in this way, simple way. Uh, Modify, qualifier basically modify, clear? Modify the behavior of the variable type to which they are applied. They are applied. Right? For example, suppose suppose uh, I have integer data type. So int, if we declare this data type variables, I is a variable of type integer. Int is a basic data type. So I here is a variable. But I here is a signed integer by default. So I is signed integer. Clear? So for example here signed, it is unsigned. So signed means they have both positive as well as negative. But in case of unsigned, non-negative. So it can store only the non-negative values. Here it can store the positive as well as negative values. So int I is a variable of type integer. Now its range will be include both positive as well as negative. Now if we write unsigned int I, that means it can only store the non-negative values. So this unsigned here is basically a qualifier. Clear? So here the unsigned, this unsigned is basically the qualifier that has been applied to a variable I, which basically change the behavior of the variable type I. It basically changes the behavior of the integer, because in the previous case I can store values both positive as well as negative, but here it can only store the positive values. So thank you. From next onward class we will discuss operator. There are different kinds of operator and so on. Thank you.